Hello, and welcome to our South Central Illinois October 2020 training overview of system performance measures and the coordinated entry process. My name is Susie Beaumont, in the event we're not acquainted, and I am a consultant for the Continuum. My partner is Jessica Pauley, and she is a consultant for Embarras River Basin Agency. First process we will look at is system performance measures. Change the slide, please. Sure. So this is basically HUD's definition of system performance measures, and they have chosen criteria to use in the awarding of COC funding. COCs report to HUD system level performance. These criteria encourage COCs to regularly measure progress, and then we report this progress in these measures to HUD. Next slide, please. This is more of a summary of the local definition for system performance measures. We use the data that we gather to provide a complete picture of our 18 counties across South Central Illinois and how we are at preventing and ending homelessness. HUD also uses this information use our information reports to award projects under the future application competition, which is known as the Notice of Financial Assistance Award. And third, system performance measures are used to measure or to set benchmarks for our projects so that we keep improving our performance. Next slide, please.
Okay. Now we will be watching an overview video presented by HUD on the system performance measures. Susie, can you see the YouTube screen?
Sure can.
Hi, I'm Norm Suchard, Director of the SNAPS office at HUD. Every decision we make here at SNAPS is guided by the goal of ending homelessness. But to reach that goal, we need to track and better understand our progress. We've designed 7 measures that examine different parts of your community's performance. They are the length of time people remain homeless, the extent to which people return to homelessness, the total number of people experiencing homelessness, employment and income growth for people served with COC-funded programs, the number of people who experience homelessness for the first time, returns to homelessness and successful housing placements for people in Category 3 of the homelessness definition, and successful housing placements. We're providing much more detail about each of these measures, but in this video, I want to provide you with a general overview. Each of the 7 measures tells a different piece of the story, and all 7 together will help make your community make informed and balanced choices. Our core measure of ending homelessness is the number of people experiencing homelessness, both at a point in time and over the course of a year. The other measures all help communities and HUD understand how well we are doing the things needed to reduce the number of people who become homeless and help those who do become homeless return to stable housing as quickly as possible. The performance measures are all interrelated. When you analyze them together, they provide a pretty complete picture of system-level performance. For example, the length of time homeless measure encourages communities to quickly rehouse people, while measures of returns to homelessness encourage communities to ensure that those placements are also stable. We've prepared a series of short video clips, each featuring one of the 7 measures. Each video explains why the measure is important, how it is calculated, and how you might consider using it locally. Before we get to those, I'm going to provide a quick overview of some key concepts. I'll also talk a little bit about how we plan to use this information here at HUD, and how you can use the information locally. First, we understand that these measures are new, and I want to assure you we will roll them out in a timeline that allows for your vendors to program the reports and for communities to start tracking performance before HUD starts collecting performance information. The data for these measures comes from the PID count and HMIS. Each measure pulled from HMIS sources will cover the reporting period October 1st through September 30th. We're not using APR data for these measures because we're looking beyond program level information. We are instead looking at the outcomes of your system. These performance measures assess a community's homeless assistance activities as a whole rather than evaluating individual projects or funding sources. Measures are sometimes limited to specific project types, and we'll get into that more in each video. But usually every person who experiences homelessness in a community is included in the measures. What makes system performance measures different than traditional measures? First of all, system measures capture outcomes for everybody who experiences homelessness in your community, regardless of what types of programs serve them or whether they're served at all. This helps counteract the incentive to serve people who are more likely to succeed. Second, system performance measures capture the combined effect of all homeless assistance activities in the community. We recognize that ending homelessness requires a broad, coordinated system, and the system measures track outcomes of that whole system rather than the individual programs or funding sources that make up that system. And I want to briefly discuss data quality and completeness. To accurately assess your progress using these measures, you have to ensure that your HMIS data are as complete and accurate as possible. From data coverage to data entry to report generation, data quality and completeness are critical. That means that all homeless assistance projects are reporting in HMIS, regardless of funding source, and for projects in HMIS, they should be recording as much data as possible. We know that this is a challenge and that many homeless assistance partners are not using HMIS. Nevertheless, we believe that these measures are vital to meeting our goal of ending homelessness, and we want to work with you to engage reluctant partners. So how will we be using these measures? First, HUD will use the data as part of the selection criteria to award projects under future NOFAs. We'll carefully consider which performance measure data is most appropriate and constructive as selection criteria for awarding grants under the COC program. We'll also evaluate how COCs are improving their performance from year to year and take into account their unique circumstances and conditions. Second, these measures give you the tools to evaluate and improve your system's performance. Because these are system-level measures, they can reveal significant information about how well your homelessness assistance programs are functioning as a whole and where improvements are necessary. In the following series of videos, we'll describe the basics of each measure, but we'll also provide you with some ideas about how to dive deeper into the data and analyze how the system is working for different subpopulations and project types. HUD isn't requiring these deeper analyses, but we strongly encourage you to use the system performance measures to inform system planning in whatever way possible. We understand that there's sometimes a trade-off between achieving good performance and the level of barriers faced by the population you're serving. These measures are different, and we have explicitly designed them so they provide an incentive to serve people with the most significant challenges to exiting homelessness and moving into stable permanent housing. Please remember this when you're assessing projects that serve populations that may have greater barriers, such as youth, domestic violence survivors, and people experiencing chronic homelessness. We hope you find the following set of videos informative. In addition to these videos, HUD has developed a System Performance Measures Introductory Guide, technical reporting specifications for HMIS vendors, and other resources. All these resources are available on the HUD Exchange. Please explore the guides, watch the videos, and work closely with your vendors to understand the new reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So even though that video had a little bit of age on it, that is the foundation that we have built on probably since that was, I'm guessing, 2015. Here we are looking at 2021, and we have been working all those years to get to where we are with our maturity on the system performance measures. And I think we know more than we have ever known about the performance of our continuum. I wanted to put out a disclaimer to everybody. This training is intended as a general overview. It's not an in-depth user training. If you're looking for more in-depth information, you would need to contact Larry Sullivan, who is our HMIS lead. Next slide, please. Okay, going forward into the system performance measures, keep in mind the data elements such as, look down in the narrative of the slide, it talks about the start, exit, and bed nights. Those are called data elements, and they are mentioned in each system performance measures depending on the criteria that is used to arrive at the system performance measurement. Later, you'll see where they're entered into service point when Jess does the HMIS presentation. And then that feeds to the system performance reports and allows computations that we use for measurements. So system performance measure 1 has A and B. And both A and B measure the length of time persons remain homeless. So when we're going through these measurements, keep in mind that we are talking about persons. And 1A and 1B use different universes of clients to study. 1A uses emergency shelter transitional housing, and 1B uses emergency shelter permanent housing and transitional housing. Next slide, please. System performance measure 2 measures persons who exit homelessness to permanent housing, so that's good. But then from permanent housing, they would return to a homeless destination that is not considered successful. So this pulls information from the active clients based on entry date, there's your criteria, and project exit within a specified time frame. This does, as indicated HMIS, it goes for up to 2 years after their initial exit. And the client count come from our projects that are emergency shelter, permanent housing, and transitional housing. Next slide, please.
Susie, Larry asked me on this slide to just let everybody know that in order for somebody to return, they have to have been 14 days after they left. So if somebody were to exit within 14 days and then return, within that 14-day time frame, it would not hit our returns to homelessness. It's only somebody that's actually left the program for more than 2 weeks and then come back.
Okay, good. Thanks for the clarification. System performance measure 3. This is actually an account of our point in time, and it's the number of homeless persons. The point in time is generally done in January. This January of 2021 is going to look different, I have a feeling, because of COVID. And I believe the scuttlebutt is that we will just be counting sheltered, but that's just a, I don't know that there's any actual guidelines down yet, but in a normal year, metric 3 measures the change in counts of sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons. And it is divided into 2 metrics, metric 3.1 and 3.2. 3.2 counts the clients using HMIS data, and duplicated counts of active emergency shelter, transitional housing, and unduplicated counts. Change the slide, please. Okay, system performance measure 4 measures employment and income growth. We are interested in housing placement, but we're also interested in whether people increase their income during their time in our homeless system. When the system helps people maximize their income, they are better able to stay in their housing. So this is a very important performance measure, and it's a little different because the employment income growth for homeless persons is measured in the COC program funded projects only. For our continuum of care projects, it would be permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing. And again, we talked about the criteria that HUD wants us to use, and it is pulled from the active adult clients within a specified time frame, the entry and exit information, and income information on annual assessments. So one thing that I wanted to take a little bit of time to point out was there's different kinds of ways to increase your income. There's non-cash and employment. So generally think of employment at the very basic to be something that would hit your bank account. I think that would do a pretty good umbrella to cover a lot of questions. And then the non-cash would be, I think it's actually defined as, it's identified, could be identified as regular recurrent benefits such as food stamps or WIC that would increase an individual's income growth. This information is pulled from active adult clients within the specified time frame, income entry and exit, and like I said, on annual assessments. And one of the things that I think is very important in our data entry is to keep checking Social Security notification documentation, because when they enter maybe 1 year, they may get an income increase the next time they do an assessment, which would actually we need to give them credit for increasing that income. Next slide, please. System Performance Measure 5 measures the number of persons who become homeless for the first time. And we have metrics 5.1 and 5.2. Metrics 5.1 counts the emergency shelter and transitional housing persons. 5.2 counts emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing. This measure uses the earliest start date in any of the relevant project types during the report range. And that'll work backward in time to determine if the client was active in a shelter or housing project within 24 months prior to the earliest start date of entry. So if the client is not newly homeless, or if not, then the client is newly homeless, which we counted as a first-time homeless. System Performance 6 is the next slide. And this system performance measure is not valid in our continuum. So we'll skip on to next slide, please. The final system performance measure measures successful housing placement. This measure looks at entry, exit information, housing move-in dates, and if the client is moving into permanent housing. For instance, there's a choice in the drop-down screen on Service Point. If you have destinations that are no exit interview, no ongoing housing, place not meant for habitation, those type of destinations, those are not successful housing placement, and it measures that and then returns that performance measure. Next slide, please. Okay, another process that joins with our system performance measures to look at another aspect of our system is a coordinated entry tracking tool. This has been a document in progress for quite a while, and this is the way it stands right now. To the left of the screen, you see the regions listed. We have 3 regions, and then beginning in the next column, data entry puts the number of inquiries that they have had each month, and then the particular inquiry would be entered under which column to the left applies to the purpose of that inquiry. So we should have 100% of our inquiries addressed in that mathematical computation. Okay, that winds up my portion of the presentation, and now Jess will move on to how to enter info into HMIS.
Sure. Thanks, Susie. We wanted to give you guys just an overview of the different data fields that play into the system performance measure and how to enter those correctly. So this screen right here is the client profile on Service Point. So when entering a client, you would first click the entry exit, which is right here in the circle. And this is for entering a client into a new project. From there, you are going to go down to the Add Entry Exit button, which is about halfway down the page. You would click on this button right here. After you do that, this will pop up with the project start data. You'll notice that this is just a test. This is one of our testing profiles that we have that we can enter data in with. It's very important for the project entry date, which is right here, to be accurate. This date is the date that the person was actually entered into a project. They were accepted into one of your COC funded projects. After you click save on that screen, this will pop up. We refer to this document right here as the HUD assessment. And this has a lot of important information on it that is very important to the system performance measures. You'll notice right here, housing move-in date has an arrow. This is the actual date the person or clients found housing in that project. So the actual date they moved into their new apartment or home. It's very important that you make sure you fill out all of these fields for every member of the household, because that will also throw some errors up in the HMIS if they're not. At the end of a client's stay in your program, you need to make sure that you exit them out of the HMIS. So to do that, you would go back into their entry exit tab. And this time you are going to go to the little pencil right here next to the exit date. You would click on this. And then this edit exit data box will pop up. You need to make sure that you're clicking all the members of the household that are still in the household that are leaving the program. You make sure you put the exit date, the reason for leaving, and their destination. And then make sure you always click save and continue. That's a very quick overview on the HMIS side. If you are requesting additional information on that, please reach out to myself or Larry Sullivan. We would love to help you with whatever questions that you have with that. This is also our contact information for Susie, myself, and Larry. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Susie, did you have anything else that you'd like to share?
I don't. I just want to thank everybody for giving their time to do this training with us. And I appreciate all of their efforts that they put in at ending homelessness in South Central Illinois.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Bye now.